We are still exactly in time, and so I will reshare my screen if I'm able to. It should be this one. So we've had Rose contribution, and now we arrive to the ID group. Who will be speaking? Teacher Dagmar?
Yes, I can take over. Thank you, Alain.
Hello, teacher.
Hello. Good afternoon. Good to see you all.
Thank you.
Yeah. So I think I brought some slides from this morning discussion we had in the satellite meeting, and added some discussion points that raised there and suggestions to how to move on. So it would be good and nice if you could provide feedback and help us with that. So to remind, work group 9 on intellectual disability has the key objective that is mentioned here. So more in general to deal with rare genetic intellectual disabilities and to prove the knowledge and the understanding of these diseases that we all know are very common, though the individual causes are very rare. And there was in fact one deliverable defined to be delivered in 2022, and that is to develop a web-based database and a wiki to provide access to information on genetic causes of intellectual disability. And also to create and make this accessible and to connect to clinical information. And to closely interact with that aspect with Orphanet. So next slide, please. Yeah, so in fact, this is mentioning the same. So this is the one huge deliverable, and that has been worked already quite some time, and mainly on the coordination of Christian Zweier, who created, I think, already 10 years ago, also with colleagues of mine in Nijmegen, and database it's called SysID database. Mainly gene driven, so based on genes and both novel identified genes, existing genes, but also candidate genes for intellectual disability, and link that to what is known on the phenotype level. And this is now being integrated with Orphanet, and I think the next slide will show a scheme for that. Other points that are working on, but not formally yet, deliverables are mentioned as well, but I will come back to that later. Yeah, so please, Len, go ahead with the next slide. So here, it is visually represented, this SysID, which is a gene-based database from a gene perspective to the disease-based perspective. And this is, well, that is currently ongoing work, and it's evolving with ups and downs, but it's ongoing. So maybe next slide. And so far, there is this number of, well, let's say confirmed genes embedded in this database, and there is many candidate genes left. For the time being, I will not go into detail on the criteria where it's confirmed and where it's candidate genes, but it's all written down in the page here. And for this database, well, obviously a curation is needed. So, and that's a topic that we discussed quite extensively also this morning. So next slide. So still a lot to do. It's mainly involved on this, yeah, formatting and curation aspects. So next slide. And we are almost at the point that for all the genes and well, linked to the diseases that are already in the database, we would like to ask especially the work group participants, but we need the help of, I think, all healthcare professionals for the further curation of the work that is already in the database. And Christiana Swire and her team created a manual with the criteria and classification of such curation that is needed. And we propose, and I think this on the next slide, to have this as a pilot done in a few partners within the work group who can all, for example, curate the 10 genes and see if this manual is optimally working and how much time it will cost. And thereafter we may, for example, request and send out to each healthcare provider to curate the remaining genes, because there's so many. But I think first we need to try out and see how well this database is working and how much curation is still needed. So I think that were the conclusions for this sub-project. Not sure if there's any additional question, or should we wait for that on the end of this?
Oh no, you can. We can be as interactive as possible.
Yeah, I'm not sure if Dagmar, if you have additional points that I missed from the meeting from this morning on this this database, this web-based database that we are aiming to establish in Ithaca.
May I ask you something, Tjitske? What is the relation with the LOVD?
I'm not sure about that. I'm not sure if Alain knows. I think not a direct affiliation to that.
I think LOVD is a collection of variants for several genes, whereas this project is a repertory of genes that are involved with the connection to.
Okay, so you don't.
It doesn't go to the list of variants that you can find.
Oh, right. Okay.
No.
Maybe I can add to that. We are considering to link a link to LOVD per gene, but that might also happen as an OrphaNet. There are links anyway. So as soon as it is integrated in OrphaNet, you also have links for the gene to variant databases.
Okay.
Not in a direct interaction or connection.
Yeah. The idea behind that was that OrphaNet, because they selected to present disorders on a clinical basis, intellectual disability is one entry. So they have some genes and they are not organized to go gene by gene. So the idea was to try to not to merge, but to connect CID with OrphaNet to have a possibility to enter by gene into OrphaNet, or to go out OrphaNet to a gene by CID.
Yeah.
And you will have to change your logo because there are no more fly, I think.
Yeah, we might remove the fly, and we will definitely remove the fly team to make it a bit more slender. I think we might replace this with some Ithaca related logo.
Yeah. Thank you, Christiana.
Okay.
Yeah, shall we continue? Oh.
Hello?
Yes, I hear an hello, but...
Yeah. Can I ask you a question, Tjitske?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, I just wondered, this, to me, it looks a little bit like the panel app from Genomics England with curators and so on of a gene panel. So is it a similar system that you're, and I just wonder, could you, because now we use the panel app as our reference for different gene panels, also in intellectual disability.
Okay, thank you. So a panel lab, I'm not aware of that platform or formats.
Well, that's developed by Genomics England. It's a very good platform, and it's you can enter as a curator, and genes are labeled either green, yellow, or red, depending on the evidence.
Yeah, so it seems.
Comment on that?
Yes.
So we regularly compare the genes in SUS-ID with MF. The difference between the two databases is that in SUS-ID it also contains related information on the associated diseases and phenotypes per gene. So you get both the gene-related information and the phenotype-related information.
You know, you can go to SIS-ID, which is accessible, free.
Okay, thank you.
You can compare the two systems. Okay, let's continue.
Yes, so last year we thought of 3, let's say, sub-projects, and they are listed here. The first one was aimed to have a generic practice on the management of mentally disabled adults. We did some inventarization and some collection of existing documents that exist in literature. But so far there is not a coordinator or a person who can really take this a step further. Within this working group, well, we all know within ITHACA there's many geneticists like I am, so many clinical geneticists participating, and for this working group we in particular would like to have other professions on board. And I think that is one shout out to also to ask colleagues of you who are really in the field as ID physicians, or pediatricians who can help with collecting these documents and establishing these sub-projects. And so for the first one, we're not so progressively so fast, but for the second one, which is on the recommendation and the management of children with profound intellectual impairments and multiple disabilities, Sylvia Huisman, who is an ID physician from Amsterdam in the Netherlands, has taken over the coordination, and she has done quite some work already. And I will come back on that on the next slide, and also on the final point, I will come back later. So please, for progress, go on. Yeah, so this is what I just mentioned. This is on the first project that is currently not progressing, as there is a lack of a person who really can coordinate this. So we did a call for volunteers this morning, and well, hopefully there's one who steps up. Sylvia, are you in the meeting today? Otherwise you could better. No.
Yes, I'm here, sorry.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, maybe it's nice. I just, like with Christiane, I didn't know she was in. So please, you can, well, briefly highlight, and there's 2 more slides on your topic.
Okay, so we got the assignment to prepare or to establish practical recommendations that are based on existing material. So we had this first group meeting in the end of October, and which there were many disciplines attending, and also EPAC members. And the next step that we will produce a kind of draft recommendation with a kind of tree format based on the existing material. And we would like to ask all the nationalities to look at that draft, which includes a clear classification or definition of to identify this group of people, their characteristics and their needs, and build on these information for professionals, both medics and other health professionals, and another version, a layman version for parents and daily caregivers. So that's yeah, basically the whole concept.
Yeah, next slide. We can also, I think, skip this, isn't it, Sylvia?
Yeah, this is actually what I, yeah. So again, a layman version, because maybe again, the last slides, sorry for that, because there are two main targets. Well, the first target is to guide healthcare professionals, let's see, to guide professional care in European countries, but also to empower families to receive optimal care. So we believe that if we focus on both sides of the most important people that have to work together, and we give them the same kind of information to do their jobs the best, that we can create a information platform also with some tools and classification systems to facilitate this.
Yeah, exactly. So next slide. And next, and maybe the next one. Yeah, so you collected, you did a call for collection of already existing guidelines and recommendations, but you didn't receive so much. And we discussed, well, that's still a question, but you would also propose to send out first the survey.
Exactly.
About several questions, and then based on the survey sent out to all HCPs, define what aspects then to focus on and to ask the different HCPs to translate if there are any documents already written on these aspects.
Exactly. And the one, I was very inspired by one of the talks of Eamon about women, the guidelines development, and he very well defined the whole process, and that makes it very transparent how the consensus, because this is also about European consensus, how that was established. And I would like to stress that we also in this process try to make the whole process and to guide the whole process with how many people from how many countries in what phase, how many disciplines were attended to gain this consensus, because that's also very, very important for the dissemination and the implementation of the recommendations.
Yeah, exactly. That's very, very important, because these issues are coming back in these generic, holistic views to create within Europe. Yeah. Okay, I think that's it for this part. Yeah, then because these two topics we would like to follow up in the coming years. So the one on the adult care and the one that Sylvia just highlighted, and we discussed if there would be any other topics that we would like to address in this working group. And one that came up was to also have a similar approach and focus on the neuropsychiatric and behavioral aspects and care. And the other one, and that I posted on the final slide, was I think a bit more extension of another sub-project that was defined initially, but not just taken along in this work group, on strategies of diagnosing intellectual disability. So beyond the simple array and genome, also make recommendations on patients without who do not have a diagnosis. I think it's very, well, we think a bit more about that. I always say, well, when we look at the COVID management and rules, and we are so different than as Germany, as Belgium, as France, every country has its own rules and thoughts about that. So I think also for this aspect, it might be very challenging to have this on a European level. But one other aspect that was raised that could be taken is how to deal with the rare inherited variation that we increasingly face. To take that both on the CNV level as on the SNV level, but we didn't have it broadly discussed. So it also, well, it needs a little bit thought, but maybe some of you already could have some suggestions on that.
Thank you. You have another slide?
No, I think this was the final slide. So that was what we discussed in the morning time. Yeah.
I think the project on psychiatric and behavioral problems is interesting. Moreover, because it has been proposed that there could be an ERN dedicated to psychiatric disorders, and at the last meeting of the coordinators, this idea was more or less cancelled, saying that it was very difficult to know what could be a rare disorder in this field. So there will be nothing, and because of the connection between, well, it's not the only behavioral problem, but it's the most prevalent, probably what turns around autism spectrum disorder and intellectual disability. I think we have exactly what room there.
Yeah. Yeah, that exactly was discussed indeed. Yeah.
Okay. Have you?
Thank you.
Are there questions in the audience?
Yes, but it's not a question, it's a comment. I am Pino Zampino. I think that the work project that that must work with disability children must also consider the opportunity to create the organization of the care. For example, the relationship between territory and the center. This is one of the most important challenges that are in our country. The possibility to have a communication, a direct contact with the territory and the service of the territory and the service of the center and the service of the hospital. The second point is that is important that this work package work with very joint in the health guide, because I think that the most important problems that are the children with disability are five. Are the gastronutritional, the sleep problem, the pain problem, the pneumologic problem, and the orthopedic problem from the point of view of the pediatrician. So it's important to create a health guide on these particular problems. For example, gastroenterologic, nutrition, bone health, sleep and pain. And when we have this health guide, the work of the work package of disability is more easy, because there is just a product, the most important products. Okay.
Yes, thank you. I agree, but I was in the assumption that for these, well, these more common generic problems would be taken along in the guideline working group. Could Raoul, are you still there?
Yeah, and that's correct. For instance, you're quite right, Pino. Of course, one of the main topics we work on is transition of care, for instance, which is part of that organization. You can't do it all in one go, but and you will be pleased to know that one of the other topics will be sleep problems, which is also in your top 5 of problems that you mentioned. But you're right, Tjitske, that's something we deal.
Yeah. And yeah, we will have cross links and some overlapping aspects.
Sure, no problem.
No problem, no.
And of course, I think we have also to explore the connection with the other ERNs. I don't know if all those fields are cross-related, but for instance, for bone disorders, may have to connect with Bond because they have the orthopedist surgeon, and I think each time we can have some connection with others, also to be sure that they are not preparing the same, which would be really a loss of time if we do in parallel things. There's not much communication of what is prepared by each ERN on that field. So if you want to load these topics, which is, I think, we are very important, one of the steps would be to go to the ERNs in which you could find collaboration, either to be sure that they are not working already on that, and then try to join the train, or to propose them to send one or two experts to your group for the view of the non-geneticist experts.
Yep.
Thank you. I think we have to go